it was good to get boxing back this week. You had top-ranked boxing, Shakur Stevenson taking on Felix Caraballo, and a mid-round knockout for Shakur Stevenson. I tell you what, I think Shakur Stevenson gets the award for best fighter with no crowd noise, because he put a shot on Caraballo that, I mean, Caraballo was writhing in pain, getting right to the breadbasket, left to the breadbasket rather, and the young buck gets one. Look, man, he had some good showcase for him. I thought people were a pain in the ass. You know, the people who were like, "Ooh, no word anybody." Dude, I mean, these guys, they're hard up to train right now. People are just starting to get back into the swing of things. He's young. He's not quite at that point where it's just like what is he? I think that put him to 14-0. You know, can he get to 20 fights before everybody's like, "Ooh, fight somebody"? You know, we saw this in the UFC pretty recently with Chase Hooper. Chase Hooper, 20 years old, and they threw him in there with Bruce Leroy. And Bruce Leroy, kind of chewed him up for dinner. Like, it was just like, this. You saw the two of them frying in the fight pan, and Bruce Leroy just a little bit too seasoned for Chase Hooper's ass. So, I didn't mind it. I thought it was great to have boxing back. It was fun, and it was a nice showcase for Shakur. So good for him. And obviously great for the Sweet Science to be back. And the big news this week, of course, was the agreement upon Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury. They have come to a 2-fight deal. They will go 50-50 the first way around, 60-40 to the winner. So we got that fight, which is good. I mean, it does lead to the fact of we're going to have an undisputed champion one way or another, I imagine, because I'm sure it's all prevalent on Tyson Fury beating Anthony Joshua. The one thing you got to say about Tyson Fury and his whole deal is, Tyson Fury doesn't have one of these typical straight up with top ranked deals. He's kind of got a lot of people who help him, manage him, MTK, Frank Warren, all that type of stuff. He gets these deals done. He came back from his comeback against, losing all the weight and whatnot. Had a couple fights, fought Deontay Wilder when a lot of people thought it was too soon to do so. Rematch wasn't too big of an issue. They had a deal in place to, they both had another fight, had the rematch, which was a 2-fight deal just like this one. They have their third fight probably coming up at the end of the year. And then, right down the way, he has the AJ fight in the marks. And some people may be like, oh, you're going to overlook. Tyson Fury is a lot of things, but you could say for this, he does say what he means. He doesn't. He isn't one of these guys where, like, a lot of people thought, him walking down Deontay Wilder, him putting his weight on him, it's all a bunch of crap. Did exactly what he said he was going to do. And so I don't think it's going to be a case of him looking ahead and looking forward. So it's kind of cool that we have this matchup put forth. It's, I'm not ruling Deontay Wilder out yet. I still think that he's got the ability to go out there and upset Tyson Fury. Some small adjustments have to be made for sure. He definitely looks like he's got to be in better shape for this one, as far as taking shots and be able to keep going, and what it's going to be like to have Tyson lean on. Because look, Tyson's not getting any smaller. So what can he do? What can he do to when there's exhaustion there and all that type of stuff? Because the other fight, there wasn't a lot of pressure on him. It was. He was getting boxed up, but he wasn't getting leaned on. It wasn't one of these things where I think he was getting exhausted. And I don't think of Deontay as a guy who taps out on energy quickly. So what is the strategy going to be for him? I think in these times when you take a beating like that, a lot of people don't see a route for you to go win. For me, I look at Deontay. I know how he's got to go win. He's got to find a way to get that right hand on Tyson Fury to create, and especially get some distance between him and Tyson Fury so he can load up on it. He's not a guy who's going to come in with one of those like patented uppercuts or anything like that. Like, he needs to get distance so he can have that wild shot come from somewhere, load up on it a little bit. And Tyson just didn't give him any place to breathe that last fight. But as far as if we're to look to the matchup of Tyson versus AJ, this again, if I am a Tyson Fury fan, I'm not too worried about this. Just first of all, we got to remember how much the guy was out of the sport, and he's only had, like 5 fights on this comeback trail, where he has really gotten better every single time we've seen him. Maybe the only time you could argue that he didn't was against Schwartz, where he had the bad cut, which probably would have been stopped if he was a lesser fighter, if he was a lesser name. So, but other than that, I think we see a new bag of tricks. We do see a guy getting better. Remember, he's not old. I mean, these guys, heavyweights, can go for a little bit. I don't think he's going to fight much longer, because again, I don't think of him as a bull leaper. I think if he says that he's got 4 fights left in him, and he's got these, the Wilder fight, the 2 AJ fights, and then maybe some kind of super fight, I think that's it for him. I don't think there is going to be anything else for Tyson Fury. How does AJ beat him? AJ's got to be able he's got to be able to give him something that I think almost makes the Tyson Fury fight like the old Tyson Fury, where he's on the outside, he's a little bit worried. Can he catch him with something that that's impactful? There's just a couple things that would worry me if I'm an Anthony Joshua fan around it. One, if Tyson does start carrying around this ability to put people away, if we do see him put Deontay Wilder away, I'd be worried about that, because that's really a tool that not a lot of people go into you didn't go into Tyson Fury fights fearing the knockout. You feared getting shut out. And so now you have a whole other ball of wax that you have to deal with a guy who's bigger than everybody. So I think it's tough. I think it's tough to look at this and find where is the gauge for Joshua to win, because I don't think we've seen the best Joshua for a long time. And I'm not saying that he's washed or over the hill. I just feel like we haven't seen him take on, we haven't seen in that blood and guts type of performance that we saw him win against Vladimir Klitschko with, where it was one of the most thrilling heavyweight fights you'll ever see. But the other ones, there's been a lot of kind of waiting around, a lot of, doing there have been fine performances, but they haven't been spectacular. Even the Andy Ruiz fight, I thought that he could have gotten them out of there in much more spectacular fashion, especially the way that Andy beat him. And a lot of people look at AJ and they say, and AJ defenders will say, well, so he shows a more well-rounded game plan and you're going to rip him for it. It's not rip him for it. It's to show the world that was a fluke. When Hasim Rahman knocked out Lennox Lewis made sure people knew that was a fluke. And with AJ, I thought that he certainly got to him early, put him down early in that fight, and he still fought that fight. He made his point. It's almost like he made his point, but he kind of just let it roll. He kind of just kept it rolling enough just so he could get to the finish line and get the win and get his belts back. It is going to be cool one way or another that we're going to have an undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. That's been way too long. And I don't really care if somebody else ends. There's no, if AJ ends up having to give up one of these belts in the meanwhile, there's not going to be one of these. Yes, there'll be another piece gone, but with Deontay having a piece of the heavyweight championship, he had a claim to the title. He had held on that championship for a long time. He had beaten some good guys. He had an undefeated resume. He knocked everybody out. There was a legit claim that he was the scariest heavyweight on the planet. If this ends up going somebody else, if Usyk ends up getting a piece of the belt or somebody, I don't think we're going to have that same feeling that we did with, oh, we need to have this undisputed, undefeated heavyweight champion of the world, and we need that closure. So if AJ does end up losing one of the belts along the way, not going to be a big deal to me. I still think that Tyson Fury versus AJ is for the undisputed heavyweight championship of the world, because you'll have the guys with the most belts, the most prestige, the long-time rivalry, all that stuff wrapped into one. And so therefore, what else could you possibly want in a heavyweight championship? So yeah, maybe somebody will have a piece of it, but they're not going to have a real claim to the title. It's just, congratulations, you have this cool trophy. So glad that we got that one, and that one's cinched up. We'll be back with more on Fighters Fury right after this.